right, here we go. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. My goal is to try to keep this to about 45 minutes. If that's too long for you, we'll post this. Gotta make sure we're getting our mute button.
I captured the sort of.
Gotta have the mute on.
You gotta be quiet.
All right. Yeah, I have a couple of co-hosts helping me, and they are doing the either individual muting or group muting. I hate to be talking about muting. It's a bad way to start a talk, but if you could help out just by making sure that you're muted as well, because just one or two people unmuted and it makes it hard to do this. So welcome tonight. Like I said, I'm going to keep it to about 45 minutes. That's too long for you tonight, but you want to keep watching. We should have it posted on the website. I'll send a little email out. When we do, hopefully by tomorrow afternoon, I also will do an FAQ based on questions I get tonight, and then we'll just keep on, working on communicating and clarifying as we go. All right, thanks for doing the mute. Okay, so just one little housekeeping thing. I think we set up the chat a little bit differently tonight, and it just, if you do go in the chat and you have a question, it just goes to us. And I'm I don't know, I haven't had a chance to talk to my co-hosts, but do I get the questions too, co-hosts? We'll figure that out as we go. Because I'll be the one answering them. So anyway, you can still type questions in the chat. I have been doing a lot of these this year, and the chats have been super helpful and sometimes entertaining. But sometimes when we get sort of going in the chat and we start commenting on each other, it makes it harder for me to actually get to the questions. So, and we have ordered the upgrade of Zoom, and we don't unfortunately have it tonight. We're able to do the Q&A a little bit better, but and it's more of a webinar style. But as we go, put your question in the chat. Also, you can email me a question, and my email is easily accessible on the website. It'll also be on one of these slides as we go through. All right. So that's just some housekeeping stuff, and also just please keep the mute. Thank you. All right. Okay. So just to get started, talking about tonight, there has been, I always like to start by just honoring and tributing everyone who's put their all into this reopening effort, really from a year ago. And so I know there's been a large sort of national reflection on what everybody was kind of thinking and doing and realizing a year ago. I certainly have a lot of memories from then, and I know you do too. But some of the some of my most powerful memories are right around when the county executive and then the governor closed the schools, and I got to see so many of our employees just jump right into action. We had bus drivers delivering meals. If I remember correctly, I think we were doing that right within like that first week of closure. Food service folks getting the meals prepared, teachers, switching over to an online platform and a moment's notice. Our custodians kind of keeping things straight so parents could come and check things out from the school. Our administrators and office staff coordinating and organizing all of that. It was a really incredible thing to see. and that spirit and attitude has been going throughout this whole process. And so I just want to say a huge thanks to every single employee in the district who has gotten us to this point, and allowed us to at least partially reopen in a hybrid model and continue with remote operations. It's been a massive effort, and I just want to say a huge thanks to really everyone who works for the district. And we wouldn't be here tonight talking about reopening further if it weren't for continued hard work from our folks, and continued flexibility and continued patience, et cetera. So just an ongoing thank you to everyone who works for the district in making things happen this year. Also, just a huge acknowledgement and thank you to parents and families for being with us through this whole journey. It has been a very trying one, for sure. As a fellow traveler in the parent world in this community, I know being a parent has been really hard during this whole time. Being a child, being a student has been also really hard. So I just want to acknowledge and show some gratitude to all of our families and all of our students for persevering with us and being with us through all these steps that we have taken this year. It has been a journey, and the journey is not over. So tonight we are going to just kind of continue. The focus is on elementary school tonight. We're going to be possibly doing some updates about our secondary schools in further actions there, either next week or the week after. Tonight the focus is on elementary, and we're excited to be talking about some of these changes. So just a quick personal tidbit. I may have mentioned this in one of my Zooms. I've tried, after the summer, I've tried to do one of these, I think, every month. And we, as a family, made the decision to back in May of last year to get a puppy, thinking that was a good way to while away the time during the pandemic. And we all love her. She's awesome. But I don't think we quite realized how much work goes into all of that. So just on a personal note, we already have an older dog and we have a cat along with the puppy, and they all conspired last night at about 2:30 in the morning to just basically go crazy and woke me up, and I couldn't fall back asleep. So I'm only sharing that. Sorry for all the information here, but I'm only sharing that because there might be at times during this talk tonight a delay between my brain and my mouth to get the words out, and that delay is on my end. It is probably not your internet connection tonight. Okay, so that's just a little personal tidbit. And again, you can chat questions or comments to me if I've got spinach on my teeth or something tonight. You can chat that too. And I didn't have a chance to talk to my co-host. I get the chat questions too. Is that?
Yes, I believe so. I will double check, but yes.
All right, cool. Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's go to the next slide. And again, I'm sorry, I know it's embarrassing, but I always say this, I cannot walk, talk, and chew gum at the same time. So yes, I do have someone advance the slides for me, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. So it's hard for me to talk and pay attention to questions and stuff, so I need help. So thank you, Anne Marie and Mike, for helping me out tonight. All right, I wanted to kind of start with the end in mind. I know our thoughts are on the next few weeks, but I wanted to really at least set the stage for next school year. And just be clear, remember when you hop on?
So clear, it was like I was in the parade.
You were spying on this guy who stayed to watch the movie?
I already have.
Hey, you gotta mute yourself. Thank you. Okay, we are for next year. We are planning for a full return to in-person school for the 21-22 school year. So we obviously cannot control the world, and we cannot control the path of this virus that we've been experiencing for the last year. But that is what our plans are, and we're trying to put everything possible into a full return for next year. We feel the work we're doing now for this further reopening and work over the summer will prepare us for that return. We're always awaiting further state guidance, and so we We'll follow what state guidance and regulations say about remote instruction. And our planning will be focused on social emotional support and academic support along with the health and safety guidelines. Things I don't know about right now are vaccines for children and continued use of masks, and there's probably 100 other things that I don't know about yet, but we will be waiting, eagerly awaiting more guidelines from the state as they kind of come out in dribs and drabs. I also just want to acknowledge that, you know, I talked about how hard this journey is and how hard this year has been. And I also just want to acknowledge the difficulty of change for staff, for our teachers, for our staff, for our parents, and for our students. So what I'm talking about tonight does have some change elements to it. We think it's a progression that makes sense and that we can do safely. But it is change, and I do understand that change is hard and that it's anxiety provoking during a very anxious time. So please know that I try to go into these things. Any is the planning we do with reopening, with trying to think about all of our students, all of our families, all of our staff, and to try to sort of balance the the needs of all in trying to move the district forward. All right, next slide. All right, so what we have developed, and I've mentioned in some of the sort of communication leading up today that this has quite honestly been a regional effort. I mean, I'm probably more privy to this information, I guess, than everybody else because I'm on many Zooms with other superintendents, both in Dutchess County and regionally. But Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess County, there's a bit of a regional effort going on, and I think it's probably impacting every district, to find ways to bring students back to a fuller, more in-person experience, while also continuing the remote option for students and families who need it or want it. So we are part of that effort. We've been thinking about this for a while. We certainly didn't think like right after the holidays was a good time to be talking about that. And that certainly was when we were experiencing a surge in cases in the community, in the state, and the nation. But tonight we want to talk about a plan to bring elementary students back for 4 days a week of instruction, in person, I mean. Supporting our all remote students, keeping the 9:30 start time the same. And that's for a few reasons, but one is that we can keep some familiarity and regularity with our remote students, keeping remote Wednesdays. Again, for other reasons than what I have on the slide, but to accommodate our remote learners as well. To inform parents, a goal tonight about if they want to make a change from in-person to remote or from remote to in-person, to try to give you information if you want to make a change, and then to also talk about some tentative start dates. And I say tentative because there's always the chance that things may change. But we're looking to start for 1st through 5th grade after spring break, which would be April 5th or 6th. And we'd love to start kindergarten a little bit early before spring break, which would be March 22nd. You can go to the next slide. So tonight we're going to discuss what's happening, what will continue happening with the remote students and any potential changes there. We'll get really deep into the safety protocols and standards, which include ventilation, surveillance testing, distancing / use of barriers or shields, and then talk a little bit more about the timeline. So that's just a little bit of an outline of what we're going to do tonight. Next slide, please. All right, so I think this is an important slide, and I know I sent the slides out ahead of time, and I also know you can read, so I'm not going to read every single word on the page, but I certainly think it's important to start with just answering the question, why now? There's several factors going into the why now. Our levels of faculty and staff either being fully vaccinated or starting the vaccination process, those numbers are growing every week. So I can't say enough about how wonderful the Dutchess County folks have been in partnering with all the school districts in providing vaccines to all of our staff. I think sometimes the news always simplifies it to vaccines for teachers. And I want to be clear that these are vaccines available to all of our staff because we've all been working in person really since the summer. And so Dutchess County has been amazing. So I wanted to give a little shout out to them. People have been getting vaccinated, scheduling it on their own, but we also are given slots for vaccines every single week. And this weekend we have 35 of our staff getting vaccinated. Every week it's been anywhere between 25 and 30. The number keeps growing, which is awesome. And so we have our biggest number yet this weekend, and that number we have been told is going to grow even further. We are projecting that every person in the district, every employee of the district who wants a vaccine will have the process started by the end of this month, maybe even before the end of this month. So we're excited about that. Levels of positive COVID cases are decreasing in the community. Dutchess County, if you go on their dashboard, the 7-day average is a 4.01 positivity rate right now. And that's come down quite a bit from the January. We've not this entire.
Would be co-parenting.
Sorry, again, just a request when you come on, if you can keep that mute button, it just helps us get through the information. Thank you. We have not seen spread of the virus in our in-person schooling this entire year. We monitor pretty closely. I've said in other Zooms this year, we work very, very closely with the Dutchess County Health folks. We have weekly meetings with them, and we talk to them beyond those weekly meetings quite frequently. But we've also, in a way, kind of become our own mini health department here, and we'll be kind of talking about that as we go. But we really monitor things pretty closely. We try to communicate all of those cases. And we have really not seen spread of the virus in person. I think this next one, and I know expanding in person is not the solution for this, but it lends itself at least to being part of the solution. We have, and this is an issue across the country, not just here in our community. We've seen an increase of mental health concerns among our students. We have something, some of you may know this and some of you may not, but we have something, we're not constantly monitoring what people are typing on our Chromebooks, but we do have a system that alerts us administrators if students are either searching for or typing about, self-harm type thoughts. And something that's given all of us elementary educators some pause this year is it's never really been an issue with elementary students before, and this year it's become one. And so that's something that obviously is a concern, and it's not just what people are typing in the Chromebook, but it's just an overall sense of mental health for everyone, quite honestly. And also, and this is just, this has been, like I said, very hard to be a parent, very hard to be a child during this last year. But I also know that, and I'm aware families are struggling under the current model. Just the other day, the New York Times did a really interesting article where they surveyed 175 infectious disease specialists with children. And the majority of these folks felt very strongly that elementary students should be attending in-person school now with safety measures in place, which we will talk about in a little bit. So, so the need is real, and this is an attempt, and like I said, it's not the only solution, but it's part of an attempt to start addressing some of these issues, because this has been a challenge for everyone. And so our hope with the plan is that we'll be able to keep the safety level very high, and but also serve more students in person while keeping the remote program going in a strong way. I also just want to say or acknowledge that, and I maybe this is just sort of community dependent, but I know in other communities there have been like protests, or I don't even know what to call it, but like sort of like, events to try to get people in school more in person. That hasn't happened here in Beacon. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for, I don't know what to attribute it to, but I'm thankful for, us being able to talk in these Zoom ways or email ways or on the phone or whatever to talk through issues that we have. But that being said, it's still very much in my mind, and I think all of us here in the district, the right thing to do to bring students back more. And we really feel we can do it safely. So we're going to get into that tonight. Okay. Next slide. All right. So I want to just start with remote students. And so I'm going to spend the next few minutes just talking about that. And this is something that is still being developed a little bit by teachers and administrators, but I want to talk about where we are with our remote students. And so I'll spend the next couple of slides talking about that. And for folks who know they're staying remote, if you really don't feel like you want to hear me talk, because when I said in the email, people experiencing Zoom fatigue, I should have probably said people experiencing Matt Landau Zoom fatigue, because I'm sure having to listen to me on Zoom every month is becoming really trying for people. So anyway, I'll be done with this remote part in just a little bit. And if some folks are on just to hear that, obviously feel free to log off, and you can hop on the recorded version later. So we really felt it was important at the elementary level. I mean, first I want to say the elementary model that we created helped us get open and get started right back in September. This seems like a really long time ago, and I've mentioned it a lot in my communication. We were very proud of our efforts back in September to get things rolling and to open for in-person and open remotely right in September. Many districts struggled with that and waited a month or even 2 months, or some even longer than that. But the model we created at the elementary level was complex from a staffing perspective. And so we do have some teachers that teach all remote students, and we have a bunch of teachers that teach a remote section of students and an in-person section of students. And then we have some teachers who teach 2 in-person sections. So I know this can get a little bit convoluted, but something that seemed really important to us as educators is keeping our all remote students connected with their current teacher. And that, I had some folks email me over the last week or so, and I hear that, and that was always part of our plan anyway. So we really wanted to keep our all remote students with their current teacher. There might be some, an issue where a lot of students come back for a teacher and there's only like one remote student left, and we may need to move some of their instruction to another teacher, but we really want to find ways to keep all of our remote students connected with their current teacher. And I only say that example, we're not anticipating that will really happen, or it might happen once, but our plan is to keep remote students with their current teacher, to support our remote program, because I know there was concern about whether we're able to kind of pull all this off, both maybe from the parent end, but certainly from the teacher end. We're hiring an additional full-time teacher at each elementary school. These are positions that will end at the end of the year, but we're hiring an additional full-time teacher at each elementary school to support the remote instructional program. So that support's going to look, kind of different based on the teacher or the grade level. But the all remote support teacher might be providing some direct instruction to our all remote students. They might be supporting the teacher in the classroom, so the teacher can work with the remote students, or the support teacher might be doing some co-teaching with the current teacher while they try to do some live streaming or what have you. So our all remote students who have a teacher who also has an in-person group, their schedule is going to change a little bit. Like I said, we're keeping the start time for the elementary at 9:30. So we'll always have that morning check-in every single day, or much more than a check-in, that morning lesson and that morning meeting remotely. But then every day that week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, those remote students are going to have a schedule on each of those days. It's not going to be, I'll get to this in a second, but it's not going to be sitting in front of a screen the entire day. We also don't think that is healthy, but there will be direct instruction on each of those days. And like I said, it may look different based on the grade level or teacher. Some of it may be from a different teacher. It may be from this teacher that we're hiring, but we felt it was really important that that same teacher is connected in a very strong way with our remote students. And the last point in the slide, some of this is still evolving right now. So we couldn't wait till this plan was completely finalized to get out to you all because we know everyone's talking about this. But our teachers and administrators are working very closely over the next few days to try to develop schedules if their schedule changes for remote students, so parents and students can see those. But again, I really want to emphasize we're keeping that morning meeting for the remote students with their current teacher. The current teacher is still going to be a big part of their life, but there also is going to be some additional support. We wanted to keep that part going. When we wanted to invest in extra staff to pull things off, we wanted to invest in the remote model. So next slide, we're just going to get into a little bit about some misconceptions around live streaming. So we're not moving to a full live streaming model. Some districts are. I know we all have friends and whatever relatives in other districts, and some are just doing full live streaming. We did not feel like that was the way to address this issue, but there most likely will be some elements of a teacher teaching kids in person and connecting with kids at home. Some of our teachers are already doing this and have been doing this for a little bit of time. So just to be clear, live streaming is never filming in an elementary class all day long and we're asking kids at home just to kind of sit there and watch. That isn't what we'll be doing. And it's also not filming the students in the in-person class the entire day either. The teachers who are doing this already, they focus the camera either on a teaching screen or the wall where they're either going in front or the teaching screen is the focus as a way to kind of connect with the kids. So live streaming can be used, or a live check-in can be used to teach a mini lesson, do a check-in, or do a share with all students together. The last part is really more for teachers. When I did the presentation for teachers the other day, where we're setting up a series of meetings so teachers can kind of work with each other and collaborate and find ways to do this. All the teachers who are in this position are getting an additional iPad. They already have a camera. They're also making a list of other technology needs they might need. So just to kind of summarize, we're still keeping our remote students connected with their current teacher. We are hiring an extra support teacher to provide some direct instruction, either to in-person kids or students at home. The schedule for remote students, especially remote students who have a teacher who is also teaching in person, that schedule is going to change a little bit for them, and we are working on getting that out to parents in the coming week or two. Change has been tough this year. I'm not trying to add more stress. We're trying to find ways to really strengthen the program for remote students and remote families. We also wanted to keep those. We want to keep those relationships solid as well. Okay, so if folks have questions about that, you can put them in the chat, or you can just email me directly, and I will add those either to an FAQ or I will answer you directly. I've been trying to answer as many of the questions that come in tonight, or excuse me, came in even before tonight, as quickly as I can. Next slide. All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit, talk about health and safety considerations. And even for folks who are staying all remote, a lot of these things will probably be in place next year. So it's good if you can stay, because we're going to get pretty detailed with some of this stuff. So this is just kind of a little outline of the next section. We're going to talk a little bit about the American Association of Pediatrics. We're going to talk a little bit about the Dutchess County Department of Health and how they're supporting us. We're going to talk about air quality and ventilation. We're going to talk about surveillance testing. We're going to talk about social distancing and use of barriers. And like we've all been reflecting a lot about things, how life has changed in a year, I can very easily say that that list of things I just rattled off were things I never would have predicted knowing anything about a year ago. So one thing I want to assure you is on the health and safety side, we are going all in. We are using every single mitigation strategy that we can to make in-person school safe. And we will get into detail about that. So let's hit the next slide. All right, so this is just this Association of Pediatrics, it's a national association, came out with a very large document, and they continue to come out with stuff. But January 5th of this year, they came out with a really strong statement about the importance of elementary students being in school, if at all possible. Kind of put I think, a challenge to school districts and to both federal, state, and local governments to support us in doing that. And it spoke to me, as someone who's dedicated my entire professional life to schooling, to try to make this in-person schooling happen. So you can Google it, if you're into reading about this kind of stuff, and they have a lot of information on their website, and I encourage you to do that. Next slide. So this is very wordy. I don't usually do slides like this, but I knew I was going to be putting them on the website and sending them out to people, so I wanted people to see. This is kind of a capture from a memo that the Dutchess County Health Department put out on February 22nd. They reviewed the CDC guidance that came out the week prior. And, as I said, we meet with them at length every single week with the other districts in the school district. I mean, just as an aside, almost to the point where some of these folks are starting to feel like family, which is really cool, maybe a little strange too, but we're spending a lot of time with our health department partners, and they've been amazing this year. So they came out with a memo for districts to really support and encourage us to provide for more in-person instruction. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I am going to read the part in yellow. When transmission rates are low or moderate, they feel and put in this memo, and we'll post this memo on our website tomorrow too, that it's appropriate to consider using a variety of risk mitigation strategies when 6 feet of social distancing is not possible or practicable. Some of these additional strategies may include use of physical barriers, increased ventilation and improved air filtration, and surveillance testing programs. So our transmission rate in terms of positivity rates is currently in the low category according to the CDC. And so the Dutchess County Health Department really is supporting us and encouraging us and putting it in writing to support us in bringing students back and finding ways to keep it safe if we can't always have 6 feet of social distancing. Okay. So I know that's a huge question about the social distancing, and I'll sort of get into it a little bit later, more in depth. But I'm proud to say tonight that we are trying to use every single one of those strategies to make it safe. And if we need to continue these strategies in the next year, we will. Next slide. All right, first let's talk about air quality and ventilation. I got really into this last summer. I started following a guy named Joseph Allen from the Harvard School of Public Health. He is also, I like to think of him as a very practical-minded proponent of reopening schools, especially elementary schools. He does a lot on social media, Twitter, and also just puts a lot of stuff out. And he is a huge proponent of air filtration and ventilation being the way to open schools back open. So I have a little quote from him. You can Google him and you'll find a ton of stuff, like on either the Harvard website or just things he's written. He's interviewed all the time, but he's become a huge advocate for trying to find ways to open schools safely. So as you may recall, last summer we purchased MERV 13 filters. We also replaced all the replacements we needed for this year, and we installed them in all of our classroom unit ventilators in September, and we're now replacing them on a schedule. So we are adding to that. We are adding, I like to think that this is the highest standard level we can do, but we're adding portable HEPA filters to every single elementary classroom, and then ultimately to every classroom as well. And I don't mean ultimately like 5 years from now. We definitely want all of our classrooms and learning spaces covered by the start of next school year. We probably will have most of these in this spring. These orders are already been placed. We've already got the shipment statements, so these will be in place easily by increased, by bringing increased numbers back into the buildings. I'm not an expert in this. I'm not great at talking about it. I read about it all the time, but it's just not, I'm a former fourth grade teacher and an elementary principal, and talking at an advanced level about air filtration is just way beyond my ability level. But I do know having these things in place creates a very high level of air change in a classroom, where the air is not only being filtered, but it's just being changed out at a pretty rapid level. And I think it's probably one of the most powerful things we're doing to keep things safe or maintain safety. And I will, I'm just going to brag for a second. I don't brag a lot, but this is an area where Beacon is going above and beyond what a lot of other districts are doing, and we're proud to say that. And also, just on a basic level, springtime means we can open the windows again, and that is probably one of the best ways to filter air, just to have air coming in and out of the windows. Obviously, we're going to keep wearing masks like we have all year, and we are going to be bringing back some of our outdoor tents. We are kind of analyzing, and we analyzed last fall which ones were used more than others, and so we're going to for sure focus on our elementary schools and bringing outdoor learning spaces back for our elementary students, and we'll evaluate what makes sense for a secondary, but we'll be doing that. So huge emphasis here in Beacon on air filtration, ventilation, and air quality. And as we have learned, and honestly, I think a lot of the experts knew a long time ago that it is a virus that is transmitted through the air, really not in other ways. That's why things like masks and air filtration are so important. Next slide. One more back. Thank you. So another mitigation strategy that we're going to continue doing is voluntary surveillance testing. We started a few weeks ago. We did another round of testing this week. We are a school district, and we have never done this before. Our nursing staff is absolutely amazing, and they just jumped into doing rapid COVID testing. Just kind of blew me away how well they've done it. And we have this whole really amazing system where you don't even have to wait very long. You don't have to wait in line. You go to the high school and it's all done in your car, and then you just wait for the results. It's pretty cool the way they've all designed that and set that up. And we are going to continue to do that. So, we're going to try to do it on Wednesdays. We might try to do some testing. And if any of our school nurses are on this call, I haven't talked to you about this yet, so I apologize, but maybe some early morning testing on, 1 or 2 days a week where it makes sense. But we're just trying to find ways to test asymptomatic students. And then, possibly staff. It is voluntary. We cannot require it. The state made that clear. We've had a number of volunteers get on our spreadsheet, and I'm going to do another round of I don't know the right word, begging people to be a part of this, or asking nicely, just because it really helps us see what we're dealing with. And it also helps kind of give us a level of how safe things are. I know it's not perfect. I know one could argue that a voluntary program, people are sort of self-selecting. I get all that. I've heard all the arguments. I still think it's important to do. So we've only, in our 2 testing rounds, we've only tested, I think, about 70 students over those weeks. And I'm kind of waiting till we get a bigger number to do like a big communication about this, but we have had 0 positive cases in those 70 students. So we're going to keep testing, keep encouraging people to be a part of the program. It helps us build data. The health department loves districts who are doing this because it gives the health department more information, and it helps us. It is not a requirement for us to stay open. The state has dropped all of that, but it does. It helps. It just does. So when I maybe send out a robocall or an email, think about signing up, because it just supports our efforts. All right, and gives us good information. All right, next slide. All right, this is where we're going to get into social distancing a little bit and the use of plastic barriers and desks. So at the elementary level, we're going to make every attempt to cap our classrooms at 17. That does not mean every class is going to have 17. I don't have this incredibly scientific way to say that why we arrived at 17. We have some really large elementary classes and we have some smaller ones. In analyzing all those classes, we felt that we could get 17 in safely. And obviously, if it's one of the smaller classes, we're going to be underneath the 6 feet of social distancing. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. We actually think our class sizes at the elementary level are probably going to be between 11 and 17. We may have a couple of exceptions. We do have some large elementary classrooms, and we might have, a class with 18. That just might make sense, so we're not having to move a child who's, been with the same teacher all year. So we want to also honor that. I should have probably had this at the top of the slide, but right in the middle is a line straight from the health department guidance about opening schools that came out last summer. And they say in that guidance that appropriate social distancing means 6 feet of space in all directions, or the use of appropriate physical barriers between individuals. So how us and all the school districts in this region are interpreting that is if you need to go below 6 feet, we need to have barriers on desks to provide another level of safety. Now, I'm going to be honest, and I think even that New York Times article I was referring to earlier in the presentation tonight, they had those infectious disease specialists rank mitigating like the most effective mitigating strategies to the least effective. And, ventilation was at the top of their list, and these barriers were further down the list. But it's still in the state guidance. We heard rumors that the state guidance might change, but we can't wait for the state guidance to change. So we're going to do every single mitigation strategy we can for classrooms where 6 feet of social distancing will keep occurring, and for classrooms where we need to go a little bit underneath that. So in some of these classrooms, we're going to need to replace tables with desks to give us a little bit more space. And in some of these classrooms, we're going to need to add clear plastic barriers to those desks as just yet another level. So Dutchess County, the reason Dutchess County wrote that memo that I referred to, the reason they wrote that memo on February 21st is they really wanted us going beyond barriers and considering other mitigation options. And again, I want to emphasize Beacon is doing all of them. So we are estimating right now that we may need to do these barriers in maybe just 10 to 20 of our elementary classrooms and then we can achieve the 6 feet distancing in the rest. That number may change based on, the numbers we're looking at. Okay. What we're going to do after we get a sense from families, if they want to make changes, we're going to look at those numbers and then we're going to develop an individual plan for every single one of our classrooms to get students back in safely and to maintain what we're putting out here. So again, just to reiterate a few things, and I'm sorry for repeating myself here. We're doing I think a very high level, even a gold standard type work with ventilation and air quality. We're continuing with surveillance testing. We're also adding barriers desk barriers where we can't maintain 6 feet of social distancing the entire time the students are in the class. We strongly feel, and we feel this from our local health department and also watching other districts that have been doing this for a much longer time this school year, that we can do this safely. Whether you trust that or not, I've worked hard to build trust this year and taking this very, very seriously. We feel strongly that we can do this safely. The health department will continue to work with us and continue to monitor things. And if they feel, and they told us this in several of our meetings, if they feel like we're not maintaining those safe standards, then we'll be having a different conversation. But we're doing everything they're asking and frankly going a little bit beyond. So I was in a regional superintendent Zoom. There's one where all 5 of the counties where we all get on, and in the past we used to just see each other maybe once a month or once every other month, and now we talk and share every single week. And there's a few districts south of us that have started these efforts several weeks ago. And one of the superintendents said something that I thought really sort of struck home to me. There was a lot of people, and I don't want this to sound critical, but there were people who said to me and just sort of out on social media that kids would never want to wear masks in school, that kids would never want to be in school wearing a mask, and why would we even consider doing this? There was a ton of concern over the summer about kids even being able to wear a mask during the school day. Honestly, I wasn't sure how it was going to go. Like, it was kind of a bit of an adventure that first day or two, because I just had never seen this before. And what we experienced was the kids just kind of blew us away. Our students did, and they have been just incredibly serious about this entire year. And they've also proven that if they're able to be here, that wearing a mask is not a deterrent to being in school or these other safety measures either. So the point the superintendent was making is he started with these increased mitigation efforts a few weeks ago, and his kids have been back in. And, you know, he had people saying to him, kids are never going to want to be in school with these other things in place. And what he's found is that just like everything else this year, the kids are just rolling with it. The students are just rolling with it. And if it helps them feel safe, you know, and it helps bring more students back, you know, that's great. And so we've been monitoring other districts and working closely and talking with a lot of other districts who might be a little bit ahead of us, or, you know, doing this a few weeks in advance just so we can learn from them too. What those folks have been seeing is students are able to come back to school, you know, want to be here, and they're okay with being here with some of these things in place. So that was helpful for me to hear. I think I knew that in my gut, but that was helpful for me to hear. And I just heard that today. All right, next slide. All right, let's just talk about some next steps here. And I will put some of these next steps in writing too, because I may not have gotten as detailed as I needed to. All right, so we think the way that makes sense to proceed here is to obviously still give people a choice, but you know, I'm going to back up just for a second. Every district has probably done this in different ways, and I certainly have had my own kind of path trying to lead or facilitate our process through this, and I've probably made some mistakes. I did not want to put out choices where people didn't feel like they were informed, and I also didn't want to put out what I think are false choices. It really became apparent to us in the last week that we can really only offer one version of in-person instruction and one version of remote. We cannot offer 3 different things. We're not a big enough school district. Honestly, I'm not really sure any district is doing that. We certainly can't pull that off. You know, I've laid out the case for bringing more students back. We think it's necessary for students who are able. We think it's quite honestly an imperative to do this, and I'm not worried about the academic loss as much as I am, you know, getting kids back together more into more of a routine. So what we think the simplest way for folks, and I will put this in an email and it'll go out tomorrow morning. Is just like, we're going to consider, if you are remote right now, that you are, now just let me finish as I go through this, that you're going to stay in remote. If you're in person, even just the 2 days a week, that you're going to stay in person, but you do have a choice. So you don't have to let us know if you are remote right now and you're staying remote. We will just assume and proceed that you are staying remote. If you are in our hybrid in-person program, we are going to assume that you're staying for our in-person program. Now, that doesn't mean you do not have a choice. You will get a Google form tomorrow that if you want to make a change, and you do not have to fill this out if you're not changing, but if you want to make a change from remote to in-person or from in-person to remote, that you can make this change. The one thing with this is, we'll put this presentation online. We'll put an FAQ online. If you email me, I'll do my best to answer questions. But we can't finish the year doing back and forth between these things. We're going to need to, if you want to make a change, we're going to need to make that decision. We'll always, if there's a health concern that comes up for an in-person student, we'll always help support that student move to all remote. We just won't be able to have people coming to the in-person throughout the rest of the spring. It will just honestly start to get chaotic. So only if you want to make a change will you need to fill out this form, okay? So we're going to try our absolute best to match students with their school and match students with their teacher. Some of our remote students are with all remote teachers who are teaching all remote. So if they opt to come back, if their families opt to come back, they will be with a different teacher. There's no way around that. In some instances, and this is just us trying to problem solve this as much as possible, in some instances we may need that in-person instruction to be at a different school. We'll do our best to communicate that to you as early as possible, and if that's a deal breaker for you and you need to go back to remote, we can have that conversation. Like I said, we're really obviously trying to match students up with their home school, match students up with a teacher that they know, but it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to do our best. I'm a parent in the district. I love the neighborhood feel of the elementary schools. We obviously want to keep that connection going, but we also want to facilitate the return for people who want to make that return, and it might mean needing to go to a different school. Okay. The changes that I talked about for our remote students who are staying remote, we'll be communicating those changes over the next couple of weeks. Again, just to repeat, we're keeping our remote students, they're staying connected in a strong way with their current teacher, but we also are providing additional support through this extra teacher we're hiring at each of our buildings. And some of the lessons might look a little different. Some might be like live streams or live check-ins from the class. But we are not expecting students who are remote to be in front of a computer screen all day. We don't think that's healthy for anybody. We're also going to be, like I mentioned, we are going to be evaluating every single classroom over the next 3 weeks to either have, replace furniture, see how many students we can put in a classroom and which classrooms need barriers as well. Our HEPA filters, our portable HEPA filters will definitely be here by spring break. And we're just going to keep communicating. I'm not certain I'm going to need to do another full town hall like this. If I feel like I need to, I'll do that. I certainly will do that. I know principals will be doing some communicating, and I know teachers have been doing a lot of communicating too. One other thing is obviously, I hope I've communicated that I in no way feel this pandemic is over. I am a strong believer that the focus on reopening schools should be the focus of the entire community. But we still are in a pandemic, and there are going to still be cases that show themselves in our schools. I will still keep communicating those just like we have. We still may need to quarantine. We still may need to, although we've really worked hard to find ways to safely not do this, we still may need to close a classroom down or a school down. Those things will possibly continue for the rest of this year. And I wanted to be clear about that. I realized I didn't put any of that on a slide, and I not to be a downer, just to be a realist, like all of that will still continue. The quarantine thing, I got to experience as a parent a few times this year, And I know it's a challenge, and so folks who wanted to talk with me about it, part of what I said was we've been through it too, and I know it's not fun, and but it's kind of part of the reality. And I think one of the things I used to say back at the beginning of all this is honestly, when we're tracking cases and finding in contact tracing and finding need to quarantine, it is frustrating, but it is also the system working. So we'll try to keep our communication levels high, and do everything possible to make this happen. Like I told you, I was on a Zoom today where I don't have numbers, but it felt like most of the districts in Westchester were pulling something like this, doing something similar. Most in Putnam, and now most in Dutchess are trying to do something. So we're not alone with this. We're going to be learning from each other. I want to keep open communication with you. And so if you want to email me some questions, or if you want to talk to me about something, just email me, and I will do my best to try to get back to you as quickly as I can. Anne Marie, did anyone put anything in the chat?
They did. I'm going to try to share it with you, and if not, I can read it to you. So let me give it a shot.
Okay. So no spinach in the teeth comments?
No, I was checking.
I got to tell a bad joke at some point during the town hall. It's like a tradition, right?
Yes. I shared it publicly, so I don't know if you can see it now.
Okay. Sorry, I know this is going on a little long here, but so it would come through my chat? It would come to me through the chat?
Yes.
Okay. I am not seeing them yet.
Okay. Would you like me to read some of them? I can do that.
Or you can, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Hang on 1 second.
This feels like almost like a game show.
Could be.
Can I answer the question?
With my chat, but hang on, I will be there in a second. Okay.
I was going to maybe sing or something while I waited, but
Nope, we're good.
we just spared the entire community of that. All right, first question.
They didn't see anything about pre-K in the slide.
Oh my goodness, I had a note next to me that was pre-K runs a little bit differently. So my apologies for not having it on a slide. And then I made a note to mention this at the beginning of the presentation, and of course I ignored that note. So we are going to put out a communication about pre-K, I want to say Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. We are trying to do similar planning with pre-K. It runs, as you know, it runs a little bit differently than K to 5. And so we will be updating pre-K families about that and putting it on our website. My hope is Tuesday or Wednesday of next week.
Okay.
And I apologize about that to my pre-K people.
Okay. So that was several of the questions.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, pre-K folks. I should have hit that early.
Will current hybrid students stay with their current teacher for their 4 in-person days?
Yes, the plan is yes for that. There are going to be some small exceptions to things for some different reasons, but we've been like gaming this out for like a week now, and we feel like the plan right now is that students stay with their teacher. When we get the change requests in, we may have to reevaluate some things. But like I said, the elementary principals are really working a lot on this, and we're not foreseeing the need to do that. There might be some exceptions. We will really try to communicate that personally to families if we need to do that. But, I'm trying to think of, we just met yesterday, and I think the principals were feeling like we did not need to do that. So
Okay.
our hope is that we do not have to.
A question is will we know if a teacher has declined a vaccination?
No. No. That is a private health That's private health information. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's really kind of a tricky area for me to even be collecting that information. It's really kind of on a voluntary basis. So no, I cannot share that.
Okay. What if you do not want to keep your child with a current teacher? What should you do?
Say that again.
So one of the parents put on that they may not want to keep their child with a current teacher. So what should they do? What should the process be?
I'm not really sure we can do much there, but that would be a conversation with your building principal.
There's a concern, our second grader and kindergarten are off right now in full remote. So they're talking about schools again. Should someone, if they have specific things, should they email their principal about it? Because a couple of them were transferred because of remote sections.
Right. I've got an email about that too. So, and just to kind of say to the whole group who's still on here that at the beginning of the year, some of our all remote students have been served by a teacher from a different building. And so I'm not, Anne-Marie, I'm not answering this one directly. But I'm pretty sure I said this back in the presentation. For an all remote student coming back, we may not be able to guarantee that you are back in your home school. We're going to try our darndest, but we're not able to guarantee that right now. We're just not sure of numbers. So yeah. But if you want to talk further about it, I might be able to help you. What you may want to do is write your principal and CC me on it, because I may know more about some instances and your principal might know more as well. Or I'll just do my best to help you figure it out. And some of this might be ongoing. The change, I forgot to mention that if you are requesting a change, we are asking that you do the change, that you fill out that Google form by Tuesday afternoon of next week. And just to help us with the planning part. And so yeah, sorry, Anne-Marie, next one.
I had a question for the FAQ of if we still have to quarantine students, will they still be able to do their work remotely? So that might be something we want to include in the FAQs going forward.
That is a great question. So at the elementary level, the quarantining typically is a large portion of the class or the entire class. So that class would switch to a remote, a remote version of instruction at the, yeah. That's a great question. I mean, unless you're quarantining for like a family reason, usually it's most of the class or all of the class at the elementary level. So the whole class would switch over to a remote. And like I said, it still has the possibility of happening for sure, just to be clear. All right, next question.
There was a question if we could post the renderings of the outside tents and the in-classroom barriers for the elementary schools so that they can see what they look like.
Right. The tents are going to be like the ones last fall. And I realized in getting this together today that in the presentation, I didn't have pictures of the barriers. So I'm going to get some pictures tomorrow, and we'll just I might add them into this Google thing or maybe just email them out to everybody. This Google thing meaning the slides. So people can see them. And I just didn't have that together for today, but I mean, it's, again, I'm not going to pretend that this is the most important mitigation strategy. I think the ventilation standards are, in my opinion, and masking are the most important. It's sort of like a sneeze guard for a desk. But I will share some pictures of that. I think that's a great question.
There's a question of whether self-contained students will go on Wednesdays.
That is a great question too. Yes, we have, some of our students with special needs have been coming 4 days a week already this year. And we haven't fully fleshed it out but we are looking into a plan of having those students come for a half day on Wednesdays. But we need to flesh that out a little bit more. Next question.
Okay, they wanted to know if the districts had any discussion about state testing. When will they be testing, and is testing only for in-person students, or will online learners also be testing?
Yeah, this is a dangerous one for me to answer at 8:30 at night. But first, I think the chat is now open. I saw someone put something in the chat. We are now beyond the planning phase, so it's if you're in person, the in-person model is going to be 4 days a week. Is the return going to happen after installing the filters? We actually already have the MERV 13 filters installed in every single classroom. They were installed back in September. I'm fairly certain that the HEPAs will be there because we had that thing about kindergarten tentatively starting on March 22nd. But we'll check with our supplier about that. But testing, I'm going to try not to go into a rant about this, but I do believe in accountability, and I've been in education now a long time. I do see some value in standardized tests. Attempting to do this testing program this year, I just think is nuts, and was greatly disappointed by the decision to do it. So we have a lot to figure out with the tests. Here's what I know is we cannot compel we can't compel anyone who is a remote student to take the test, nor would I ever try to compel a remote student to take the test. I know there's always been a lot of thought about opt-outs in the past, and superintendents are always kind of, at least I've always been sort of neutral based on that. But like, I just, with this little in-person time as we've had this year, it's hard for me to believe that we're going to be spending time taking the test. So sorry for the rant there, but when I learn more about what testing will look like, I will share with the community. All right, next question, Anne Marie.
I think that we're still with the same theme, so I'm seeing some of the same.
Okay, you don't have to read everyone if I'm sort of answering.
Right. Some of them, I think, someone asked if there'd be a HEPA filter and a MERV 13 filter in every classroom.
Yeah. Yes. Now, I will say this, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we're going to have, we wanted to get this stuff in place for this year. We are going to review our filtration for next year, just because, there is MERV 13s, and again, this is me way out of my depth, but MERV 13s can burn out the motor of a unit ventilator, and we are kind of evaluating and concerned about that happening. So we do want to make sure we're not like ruining our machinery next year. So we're going to have some expertise come in just to give us a little guidance to get ready for next year. But this year, the MERV 13s are in place, along with HEPAs that are coming. I'm just going to look at the chat for a sec. How often will tents be used is up to the teacher or mandated by the school? It is to some level up to the teacher. However, with more students in the class, and then we've talked about this at the teacher level, I really feel that mass breaks, if at all possible, should be outside. And so I think we will see an increased use of that. What will Wednesdays look like for in-person? Wednesdays will look like they kind of currently do right now. So it's going to be a home day. So why do we still have the remote Wednesday? We have it for a few reasons. One is that it gives kind of K to 12. It gives us, and honestly, it's kind of a little bit more at some of the higher grades, but it gives kind of a check-in time, especially for our remote students. This year, we're asking a lot of our teachers, especially teachers trying to do two things at once, which are a lot of them, and so we also give teachers time on the Wednesdays for planning and PD too. lunch. That is a great question. I see a question about lunch. So lunch is each building is kind of making a plan, and we're trying to do a little bit of the problem solving in each building, but we are going to maintain social distancing while eating, and some schools are developing different plans to do that. Some might be some might be classroom based, some might be using the cafeteria, some might be using a combination of the both. When is this starting? Our goal to start 4 days of in-person. It will be right after spring break, April 5th or 6th. New teachers join the schools. The new teachers, many of them have already been in our schools as either permanent daily substitutes, student teachers, etc. And we will be training them and ramping that up over the next few weeks and ongoing as we go. What percent of individuals? That's someone asked what percentage of individuals that got COVID in the district were students versus adults. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, just by nature of numbers, it probably was more students. I mean, we kind of became students of COVID, or are currently students of COVID in the community, in the district, and like you read, it primarily happens, in the home, and I say this in a lot of the Zoom calls. We meaning you all have done an absolutely tremendous job in following the guidelines and keeping kids at home when there's a risk, and so it's really helped us minimize issues quite a bit. What will the schedule look like for the remote learners? Teachers are developing that now. I think it will have some similarity to what it is now, except it will be happening not just on 2 days, but on 4 days a week. I know there's kind of a sanity level with this, and you can't sprinkle too much because it's like, you're trying to remember when your student needs to be on, when they need to be off, and I know that can be kind of frustrating. But we're going to try to get a set schedule going, and it's going to be for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for the kids who, especially the students who have a teacher who has kids in person and kids at home. Start time is going to continue at 9:30, and that's for sure to have that remote check-in time for our students. Do we have a projected opening plan for middle and high school? Middle school students can move to hybrid at this point, but we are working on a plan for middle school to bring middle school back 4 days in person too. And high school is something we're contemplating and trying to plan for. Other districts are jumping in with 4 days in person for high school. High school is, there's obviously a little bit more of a risk there. And so anyway, middle school, we hope to be updating folks on middle school next week or the week after. But I will say this, if we're expanding in either middle or high school, the health and safety plan, part of it will be very, very similar to what I just shared. So specials, I see a question about specials. Specials is something that our elementary principals are gathering to work on a bit more tomorrow, because there will be some changes to the special schedule. I don't want to get too far into it because we quite haven't worked it out. Obviously some specials really are difficult to live stream, and we're not putting a huge emphasis on live streaming anyway. So we're still kind of working out some of the specials things, but our remote students will still have specials, as will our in-person students. Henry, were there any others that were submitted to you that you want to say?
No, they all have the same, we covered the same.
Okay. Okay. So I get we get an Henry, along with the recording of this, I get a little printout of all that stuff to help me with the FAQs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So 4 days will start. I see that popping up again. Our plan to start for grades 1 through 5 is after spring break, April 5th or 6th. And we're working on a plan to bring kindergarten in the week before spring break. Social emotional curriculum. One of the things that many of our elementary teachers are trained in, and either they've been to the extensive training or they've been in sessions in their buildings from people who have been in the training, is responsive classroom. And that is a model that's based on learning a lot about each other, building a community in the classroom, and kind of helping people be seen and be valued, and be seen as individuals in the class. And so that will be some foundation. We've also had our administrators and other of our mental health support staff trained in trauma based support for students. We obviously understand that everyone has experienced some level of trauma through this. And so that will be information that's supported and shared in the classrooms too. So I don't want to stand forever because I know this will just kind of start to get boring or repetitive after a while, but I am super appreciative of people being on. Like I said, if I did not, there are still some things we're working on. And so you can email me, you can email me if you want. But we are, just to be clear, we are moving forward with this plan. We think it's the right thing to do, and we think we can do it very safely. And we will be putting out something tomorrow that if you want to change, from in-person to remote or from remote to in-person, we're going to have a form you can fill out. Otherwise, you do not need to fill out a form. But if you need to, email me or talk this through with me more, or talk to your building principal, please feel free to do that. We've put everything we've got into this year, and I'm more than happy to make myself available to you. But thanks for being on. I sometimes say the expression, we got this. This has definitely been a year where that phrase has been personified by every person in the district, both employees and staff of our district, and families and students. And so just thank you for everything you've done. I see some staff people on this, so thank you to our teachers and staff for pulling off this amazing year. And also thanks to parents, and please emphasize, I think this is something that probably doesn't get communicated enough, but every once in a while it gets communicated to me by a teacher, and I see it every day. The kids have been absolutely amazing this year, and it, in sometimes dark times, what our students have pulled off this year gives me a ton of hope for the future. So thanks for all the support you've given your young people at home. All righty. So with that, I bid you a good night, and thank you for some of the kind comments in the chat there. And again, reach out to me if you feel like I didn't cover something, and have a great night. Oh, and one bit of good news, it's going to be 60 degrees next week, I think. And we all need that. So I'm going to end on that. 60 degrees next week at some point. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. And talk to you soon.